What is up, everybody? Your king has returned. And yes, as you read by the title of this video, I basically wanted to discuss with you guys why I believe that Springtrap from Five Nights at Freddy's and one from The Power of Two would ultimately end up hating each other. And I basically based it on three criteria. The first, genuinely being, is the fact that Springtrap, over the course of this series, as we found out through the lore, has basically been wanting to become immortal. And due to his experimentation with souls and Remnant, with him figuring out to basically cheat death in a sense. And with one, her basically sole mission is to take Two's powers from him, so that way she can practically do whatever she pleases, or whatever it is her ultimate goal truly is. Now, based on both of what I just labeled, I believe the first reason why they would ultimately hate each other would be due to the fact of how their ideas would clash. The fact that William wants to become immortal, but one wants to take Two's powers to become all powerful. Now, I know a whole lot of you guys may be asking yourselves, well, how exactly would this work out? Well, the way I see it could be that Springtrap would probably try to appeal to one, trying to convince her how immortality would be, like basically telling him how I always come back and how he's basically cheated death multiple times. One being the person who she is from what we've seen throughout the course of the episodes that she's been in, she more than likely would not care about William's agenda or his seeking to become immortal, most likely due to her own agendas of her wanting to focus on herself. I could actually see one possibly looking at Springtrap as to how stupid it is that how he would want to live forever, considering the fact that he's merely a human, because in her eyes, she sees herself as a god, and in a way, she technically is one, considering how the Algebraians have basically godlike powers compared to all the other characters in BFDI. So I can honestly see her laughing in Springtrap's face as his pathetic goal of seeking immortality when he could possibly achieve so much more in her eyes. The second criteria I want to discuss is basically as to who they both are, with Springtrap ultimately being a killer and one ultimately being a devious mastermind. Pretty much how she's been convincing the other contestants to make deals with her so that way she can get closer and closer to achieving her goal, which that is gaining Two's powers. Meanwhile, Springtrap is ultimately, well, not your average killer, but basically what you would expect from a killer from his time to be. He's going around here killing. He's trying to seek immortality, his own seeking of power. And it's really different how those two types of villainary traits contrast, because on one end you have somebody who's basically killing almost seemingly for no reason, none other more than to gain immortality. Meanwhile, you have a mastermind who has been calculating and putting pieces together to gain what she wants to gain in order so that way she can rise to the top. Try to think of it like this. One is allegedly responsible for the disappearance or the death for all the other Algebraians, excluding 6 and 4 and 2. Like, we still don't know what happened to them, but if there's one thing, considering how 6's reaction to finding out how the contestants know about one, it's pretty safe to assume, and considering that he's the last one alive, it's pretty safe to assume that one is responsible for their disappearances or their deaths. Like, when you view it as a standpoint as who is more intelligent, you could make the argument that Springtrap is more intelligent when it comes to, like, deceiving his victims and setting a trap for them so he can make the kill. But on the other hand, one has managed to, like, whisper her little lies into into the contestants, and getting them to sign their contracts, getting them to make deals that they more than likely ultimately cannot take back from. Not to mention, on top of that, considering how she more than likely has allegedly gotten rid of all the other Algebraians who could most likely potentially pose a threat to her, that takes a certain level of cognitivity, like a very high level of intelligence, to be able to calculate all those things so that way you can ultimately win in the end. The third and final thing that I want to discuss is basically how they would probably try to use each other for their own agendas. One way I could see Springtrap attempting to use one is how he would try to bargain with her to let him use her powers to possibly become a stronger killer or to gain immortality even faster. How would he do that? Well, I honestly don't know how to tell you, but one thing I can tell you is that considering how one really wouldn't be persuaded by someone who she views as a weakling, as a mere mortal, she really wouldn't fall for that, because she would probably be looking at Springtrap like, who do you take me for? Do I look like a fool to you? Because, guys, let's be for real. One is most definitely possibly hundreds, if not thousands of years older than Afton is. Even if we were to take up all the years that how old he was until he got spring locked, and even after all the 30 years, and then the years on top of that up into Pizzeria Simulator, that's still like a fraction of years behind of how old one more than likely is. So she has like tons and tons of experience when it comes to thinking, like planning, manipulating, putting pieces together so that way she could get what she wants. She's obviously not going to fall for somebody who in her eyes would more than likely view as a joke, and trying to convince her to lend her powers, like, for something so insignificant and silly, like wanted to become immortal or becoming an even better killer than who they are. Like, in one's eyes, that would just be straight up silly and ridiculous. Meanwhile, I feel like one would actually possibly successfully manipulate Springtrap into becoming her own little puppet for her own agenda. Now, I know some of you guys may be saying, but Greg, wouldn't William be way too smart to actually catch on to what one would be doing? And to that, guys, I say he probably would, but you guys have to remember that one is practically a god compared to him, and she obviously has her ways that she would definitely convince Springtrap to pretty much work for her. And it's the fact that she would probably threaten Springtrap's life or threaten to do him serious harm if he doesn't comply. I mean, if you guys recall in episode 18 what she did to Donut after he pretty much refused to sign the contract, you saw what she did to him. She took her legs and just casted her back out into the world, like, pretty much defenseless. Like, I can honestly see one, like, like, threatening Springtrap after Springtrap would probably refuse to be her puppet, and her possibly, like, ripping off one of his arms, or just, causing very serious harm to him, to the point that Springtrap would probably realize, like, I have no other choice. I have to do what she says. Otherwise, I'm screwed. And I know some of you guys may even actually say, but Greg, William, like Springtrap, he always comes back. But guys, you have to be for real. Springtrap, in the end, even though he's now an animatronic, is still a human at the end of the day. And a mere human, going up against someone like one who's practically a god, like that matchup is completely one-sided. Like, there's no winning against that. So the way I see it, given how I listed everything, I ultimately would see how that basically William and one would practically end up hating each other, and it would ultimately end up with them fighting each other. And by them fighting each other, I mainly pretty much mean that one would end up mutilating Springtrap, and or possibly destroying him altogether. But yeah, guys, that's basically all that I wanted to talk to you guys about. This was just pretty much a random idea that I had in my head that I felt like I just really wanted to share with you guys. And, well, and I kind of figured, why don't I do it, But anyway, guys, thank you so much for pretty much listening to me, yap on about this for 12 minutes right now. I do plan on making more videos like this in the future, so be sure to like and subscribe for future videos in the future. And I will see you guys next time.